Let's get started. Welcome. Every year we do a little Capstone Orientation. It can be slightly confusing, especially since we started them, but I think some institutional knowledge is being built in. But regardless, we thought we would have this orientation both to just kind of clarify the main objectives of the capstone, have some student responses to what a capstone really is. Thanks for coming. And then also a chance for the people who are offering capstones to talk a little bit about what they're going to be offering, so you have a chance to look around and ask questions, follow up. Okay. All right. So the main purpose of the capstone course, it's really the culmination of your curriculum, right? You take all your basic coursework, then comes the capstone, and now you integrate across those core courses. By applying that knowledge to some kind of applied problem. Okay? That's the main component of it. It's the culmination, so naturally it's going to be a little bit more work. So that's the purpose it serves in the curriculum. But you should also think of it as sort of a carrying card, a good thing that you can give to future employers or to hone your own expertise in a particular subject area. So that's the main goal of it. And the second goal, and this is why it might be confusing to people, for the MA students, it serves as our university's exit requirement. So MAs have to take some kind of exit requirement, and so we decided to fold that requirement into this course so that typically a midterm assessment is given. It's about 30% of your grade. So the course also serves that function, but primarily it's, again, the culmination of your program here. So I don't think I have too much more else to say here. There's a variety of capstones, and shortly this website here can give you access to previous capstones, so you can get an idea of it. You can look through those. We have typical individual research papers, which Charlotte and Rob are going to talk about. And then we have two subject areas, which Noah and Mary will talk about. But that's enough for me. My goal is to make sure you're clear about the goals of the capstone. But maybe some students can tell you what it's really about, or really how to prepare. So Julie and Eric?
I'm currently in capstone right now. So just a little bit about me. I'm a dual degree master's student between civil engineering and public administration. And capstone is really useful, I think, if you are a dual degree student. You can kind of line up your research interests with your other degree. And also, if there's just a topic you're really interested in, I think the individual research capstone is a really good choice because you can explore that more in depth. If you've already explored that topic in some other classes, like legal environment, you can also kind of continue to focus on that topic.
Eric Metcalf, dual, environmental natural resources, and then over here in MA in career program. I know a lot of you. Big takeaway, Dr. Lansford 7900 this semester, working through it. I guess we talked about it last class, but Julie and I were sort of on the same page with things we're prepared for. I know a lot of you have already taken program evaluation, but carrying a topic forward, I know a lot of us bounce around, so we have so many different interest areas, but if you can carry a topic forward from program evaluation or from all your other courses, particularly a topic that has data, do not come to this course thinking you might have access to data. Make sure you have data in hand, not someone's going to provide you with data at a certain date. I know you went through a charter evaluation, but we've had so much situations like that, but having data in hand from some sort of, and then it also helps, I know in my particular case, I have a customer that I'm actually providing a deliverable to, so that adds a real world context to it. So at the end of the semester, I'll present to how Division of Wildlife on what my findings were with my particular study. So the data was a big thing, carrying the topic forward from a previous class, which I know at least Dr. Landberg has encouraged. I know Dr. Bookman, several had him encourage us carrying that idea forward. With that same note, all your literature reviews and everything like that, try to compile all that ahead of time if you can, or find it convenient to. That way you can refer back to it and have some sort of idea as you're going into it. If you read the course requirements, I know in the middle of summer, by July, sometime in July, we had to provide a short literature review or reading list where we're getting our data from, and proposed research questions about that too. If you're taking it in the fall or spring, there's going to be a prior to the start of the semester.
Multiple kinds of capstones, and so they're talking about the individual capstone, where you do an individual research paper, right? Charlotte and Rob will talk about those shortly. Those might be a little bit different than what Mary and Noah are going to talk about. But again, I think what you heard from them is have some of these ideas ahead of time, so you can get your data, your ideas done ahead of time. So once you hit the semester, you can get going. And I think that's probably going to be the takeaway here, students.
One other point too is when you're working through the paper, it's set up, or at least for the individual paper, it's set up for each week as an incremental step. So you're building on your paper the entire semester. So don't think that you're going to be all of a sudden get towards the end of the semester and you got to crank out a pretty extensive paper. It builds on itself and it gets graded, you get peer feedback. So it makes it a little bit more palatable and bearable if you're taking other coursework at the same time.
I was just curious, because it sounds like so much of this is individual and outside of class. I'm just kind of wondering what takes place in class, if you're working on other material, or if you're just kind of consulting on your paper along the way.
So each week we'll look at some previous examples of individual research capstones, and then we'll have some discussion about what those papers did well, what they didn't do well, just kind of how to approach a literature review, or how to write about your data in a way that's clear. So that'll be the first portion of class, and then we'll work with our peer groups. So we're broken into groups of 3, and we'll review each other's previous week's work and provide some feedback and ways to make improvements. And that's a really valuable process to get some editing along the way. So I think.
And the professor, Dr. Landsberger and the TA have been more than available because it's a small, there's only 9 people I think in our class. So once you break out your peer groups, they walk around, so feedback is easy to obtain.
And we've done this, I guess, one time before, kind of team teaching it. So we're
really good at interrupting one another. It is a little bit of a show.
Yes. So one of the assets, so literally, like I was saying, we're here to help you write your paper, and there's no one way to do something, which is one of the reasons why it's really fun to have 2 people teaching the class together, because you're going to be getting feedback not just from your group mates, your classmates, but from both of us, and sometimes we'll disagree with each other a little bit. And so, unlike the class that Mary and Noah are teaching, our lectures are going to be about writing a paper, rather than providing lots of information about a particular topic. And so, you've already heard a lot about the process. You'll write lots of drafts of the papers. The main deliverables is that there's scintillating lectures on things like introduction and literature reviews, and methods and data sections, and those will
how to write a title.
Oh yes,
I like that one.
That's a good lecture.
Well, this is on tape, right?
Yes.
And so the main deliverables, you'll be turning in the different paper sections. You'll be turning in multiple drafts of those sections. So you'll be getting feedback from your group mates. We're going to break you up into groups based on your topical interests, possibly the methods that you're using. And you'll get feedback from your classmates, and then you'll turn in a second draft where you'll get feedback from us. And then, most typically, your third draft will be part of the final paper. And then along the way, as Professor Landsbergen mentioned, you'll have this midterm assessment. So by that point in the semester, you'll have done almost everything in the paper except for completing the analysis and writing out the analysis. And then for all the capstones, you have a written deliverable. They'll differ a little bit among the classes. And then you'll also have some sort of presentation of your research. And you've already seen lots of this. You've heard the advice from your classmates, but those of you who are interested in doing the individual paper, and I would advise you, if you want to dig deeper into a topic and take this as an opportunity to either follow on a paper that you've done in another class, or dig deeper on maybe something you're working on at work or an internship that you've done, this is your opportunity to do that. So first thing you need to do if you want to do the independent paper version is to have a topic. And in a lot of regards, this is the hardest part, is having a researchable topic and coming up with some research questions. So as part of that process, what you should be doing now is reading a lot about that topic. And keep in mind, as you're reading other papers, think about what data they're using, what questions they're asking, what are the interesting questions, what interesting questions are they addressing in their papers, and start thinking about, well, what could I do that's similar or that could extend what they're working on. Think a little bit about the methods, and think about your toolkit, and think about what you could do in your own paper, and then it has to interest you, right? It's not a doctoral dissertation. You don't have to live with this for 2 years. You have to live with it for about
15 weeks.
15 weeks. The next step then, as you've heard, that's all great, but if you don't have data or you don't have a way to address these questions, it becomes difficult. So if you don't have data, start over or talk to us. If you do have data, or you've gone through this a couple of times, start formulating your questions, and we start on that as part of our week 1 lectures, helping you turn your questions into researchable hypotheses. Okay? And then, as you've already heard, you want to start on the
So I would just make a note on the data issue is I think often people think that data equals numbers and that you have to run a regression. You do not have to run a regression in this class. Data are a lot of things. So data could be information from interviews, data could be information from surveys that, so that you can do both qualitative or quantitative analysis in this class.
And a lot of our program really prepares you to do quantitative analysis. Professor Clark next semester is offering a qualitative analysis class, and she's teaching that with the thought in mind that some of the people in her class will be doing an independent research paper. So if you are interested in doing qualitative analysis for the capstone and you have room in your schedule, I would highly recommend considering taking that class too. So one difference between our class and their classes is that our registration cap is 0 right now, and you have to get approved to get into our class. And we just want to make sure that you have a topic that's doable. Right? So you need to send us a short email with your proposed topic, your preliminary research questions. You don't have to have refined hypotheses yet. Some data sources, and as you've heard, we've done this enough times now. A lot of times there's a difference between saying, oh, I think there's this data set out there, and actually having your fingers on the data set. And just a short preliminary reading list, and that may come from a paper you've already worked on in the class. And then if you could send an email to both of us with that information, then we'll provide you some feedback. Before doing that, you're welcome to talk to either of us about any of your. The other thing I would recommend doing, and there's information on the website that we have handouts predominantly because of this, we have an archive of previous year's papers on Carmen. It's the old Carmen, so you have to go to the Distance to Learn version of Carmen. And it's a different type of Carmen page. It's a self-enrollment page where here are the instructions on how to get there, and once you get there, voila, there are a bunch of the old papers there, and you can kind of get a sense of what these papers look like. You'll notice some are really good papers, some aren't as good papers. But you'll get a sense of the different types of questions people have addressed and the way they've attacked them. You can't take it.
Oh, come on, please. Just nuts and bolts about registration. So if you speak with Professor Greenbaum and or Professor Kirchner, and they say, okay, you're ready to take the class, then what happens is they usually would send a quick email to me and Whitney, and then one of us, as soon as possible, whoever can get to it first will enroll you in the class. So that's how the end of that process works.
And so our goal, there are 3 classes, but in effect there are 4 classes since there are 2 of us. So our class will try to keep under about 30 students, and Professor Shearhart and Dormity's class, about 15 students, we'll count them. These are smaller classes than some of the others who take in the program, and you get a little more attention in the class. Yes?
I guess of the capstones that have been done, do you feel like the qualitative individual research papers was there any, were the qualitative stronger than the quantitative, or is there any, I guess, pattern there in terms of how well the independent research?
No, I think at least in the ones that I've had, the Some of the qualitative ones have been very strong, some of the quantitative ones have been very strong. You know, and there is equal amounts of work at different times.
Qualitative can sometimes be more work because you're collecting primary data, and so that may be doing your own surveys or interviews, and that can be time
Very
consuming.
time, yeah. And, you know, qualitative papers tend to be longer because there's more to describe, you know. You can't just say, in terms of methods, I ran a regression. You need to explain those methods so that they're reproducible for others. So certainly I've noticed a lengthy difference. Yeah, Patty.
Are students creating their own surveys, the ones that use them, or questionnaires? Is that the requirement, or are they working off of data that already exists?
Both.
Okay, so either is acceptable.
Either is accessible.
What's more typical, would you say?
I think it's more typical to start with data that already exists. If you don't have, if you're trying to do your own interviews or your own survey, come talk to one of us sooner rather than later. Don't wait till December 1st because you're going to need to get that survey or that interview material together. And we'll also want to make sure that you have a reason to believe that people will respond to you. And I guess we were going to say something about IRB.
Go ahead.
So many of you have heard of the IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board. This is the review board at the university that makes sure that people conduct their research in an ethical and approved manner. The papers that you all are writing are exempt from the IRB process, unless if you expect that you are going to take this research and bring it with you to do something like publish, or if you're going to, you know, thinking about a PhD program and want to bring this into your dissertation work or something like that. If you think that you're going to use the data that you're collecting outside of the capstone experience, then you may need to go through IRB. So if you are thinking along those lines, again, please talk to us sooner rather than
Charlotte, let me add one caveat to that for IRB. If what you're doing for an educational purpose would get exempted from the IRB process, unless it involves sensitive subjects such as prisoners or children, so minors. If you're doing anything with education policy with kids in school and you're surveying kids, talk to them.
And I should say education policy, and you're actually talking to the child, not if you're using ODE data that's already been de-identified, and it's, you know, they've got their public data on their website. You don't need to worry about IRB for that.
One point for that too, if you've done your city training or haven't, recommend digging up your certificate so you can, it'll ease your semester burden. You have that training already done.
That will be an assignment.
That will be an assignment, yes.
If you don't know what that means, that's okay. Find out soon enough. And so those of you interested in taking our class, the first important deadline is November 1st. So make sure you get your proposal. December 1st. So good. Just testing you guys.
Making sure you're listening. And we're, of course, happy to talk about any ideas before you write up.
7920 will be the public sector economics capstone. And before I talk a little bit about the design of the course and how it's structured, let me just talk for a minute about what my philosophy is about the capstones and really about graduate school in general. I want you to think about where you're going to be at the end of the time that you're here at the Glenn College. When you're, what is that going to be, next May, next April? And what good will your capstone paper do if it's sitting on the shelf but you're looking for a job? My focus, my predominant focus for my graduate students is to get you a job. And if your capstone paper doesn't do that for you, then it should. And that's my focus. My focus is to connect you with employers. So what I do during my course is I bring in, to the best of my ability, guest speakers who are your future employers. If you want to work for the City of Dublin and you want the city manager for Dublin to come in, he'll come into my class. I'll invite him in and he'll give a guest lecture. And guess what? When he leaves the classroom, you've got a draft of your capstone paper to hand to that gentleman, and I get to walk out of the classroom with him and say, you know what? Bobby's going to be on the job market in about 6 weeks. You're going to want to get him while he's hot. Okay? My focus is to get all of my students jobs before the end of the semester. That's my hope, that's my goal, lofty goal. Okay? Unemployment rate for recent graduates is really high. That's my goal. So what I hope for anyone who's interested in my course before the semester starts, as soon as possible, if you're interested in enrolling in 7920, tell me what jobs you want. And I'll go out and I'll invite guest speakers to my course and fill up my second half of my 3-hour lecture time with approximately 80 minutes of guest speaking time with your future, hopefully your future employers. I believe in a lot of individual feedback. It takes a lot of time on my end. I like to meet with my students weekly. I like to talk with them weekly about their papers. I like to look at frequent drafts. And that takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time, and guess what? It's not easy for you guys. But the hope is that it's not just a paper sitting on a shelf at the end of the semester. That it's something that can actually look like you have competence and expertise in some area that some specific future employer needs. That's my hope, okay? So the goal of, essentially my goal for you in taking the Capstone course is to connect you with future employers and to give you a set of practicable skills that can connect you with those future employers. Let's look at the course schedule in terms of the topics. So I have specific days throughout the semester, 11 days of the 14 days, where we will talk about specific readings that I hope will be preparatory readings, preparatory concepts that will help you in terms of getting you engaged with the future job that you want. Now, we did everything we could in designing our curriculum to give you all of those skills so you could get out and have general knowledge. But there might be skills and applied topics that obviously for the job that you want, we couldn't design an entire course around. And so my hope is that we can design specific readings within each of these topic areas specific to you. So if you're interested in health economics and you want to work for the state Medicaid office, tell me that ahead of time. And we'll put in readings specific to you. If you want to go work for the Public Utilities Commission, or if you want to go work for the Insurance Commission, we'll put readings in specific for you. And we'll discuss those as a course. And guess what? As we're doing those readings and as we're discussing those topics in the class, guess what you're also doing? You're also writing your literature assessment for your capstone paper. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So let's look at the specific topics and field areas. The first 2 weeks will be focused on market failure. Really the whole focus, the framework that I like to position public economics in is within the field of market failure, within the topic and the idea that essentially the conceptualization of market failure, why we even need to have public involvement in the private marketplace. Cost-benefit analysis. You've taken some cost-benefit analysis in your 60-80 course and a little bit in 60-30. We're going to dive deeper into cost-benefit analysis, and we're going to spend a lot of time looking at applications of cost-benefit analysis and applications of specific topics later on, like time series analysis, for you to be able to have skills and capacities in the future after the course to be able to evaluate consulting reports, policy briefs, applied economic analysis. And it's really my hope that not only will you be good consumers of economic analysis, but you'll be able to make really good decisions in whatever public sector job you take after you've had some background in those applications. After that, we'll focus on experimental methods. We're going to dive deeper than you did in your 60-80 course and look at the difference between quasi-experimental, experimental, and experimental applications, lab experiments versus field experiments. We'll dive into applied welfare economics. We'll look at applications in public housing, SNAP, and social policy. We'll also take some time specifically if you have an interest in education or food policy, education or or health economics. After that, we're going to dive into specific applications of microeconomics, when microeconomics is used for policy analysis, specifically for consulting reports. We're going to dive into impact analysis. So often there are requirements, especially in regulatory policy making, where if a tax is put into place or if some regulation changes, that the commission or the legislature has to evaluate the impact that that policy will have on jobs, or the impact that that policy will have on gross state product. Well, they use impact models, and we haven't covered many of those throughout your curriculum. We're going to spend a week on those here as well. We're going to dive deeply into forecasting techniques, and we're going to take some of your data, and if you want to use time series analysis for your capstone, we're going to learn those that week as well. So time series, we're going to look at ARIMA, our FEMA models, ARCH models, GARCH models, and some interrupted time series approaches. And then finally, we're going to have a week where we're going to focus on applied economic analysis of disequilibrium behavior. Terrorism events, natural hazards, applications in specific, essentially economic shocks, and the effect that they have on macroeconomic systems. Let's talk a little bit just about structure, and then I want to kind of curtail my time here a little bit. Am I over time, or?
Another 5 minutes.
Another 5 minutes, okay, great. I only had 5 minutes.
You started crap.
Okay, all right, good. Great. So a little bit about structure. I fully understand that students who are going to take the capstone course, we all write our papers at different times. And so what I've done is I take until the end of the semester, you'll see on the schedule there, I take until the end of the semester to allow us to have specific workshop days. And what I've found through prior courses is that students get a lot of feedback, positive feedback from their peers and colleagues. In addition to getting feedback from me on a weekly basis on your progress on your capstone paper, you're also going to get feedback twice through the semester at these 2 workshops from your colleagues, where they're going to read your paper in its current draft form and offer feedback and comments. And I can't underscore the importance of that in the development process. Being able to take feedback from your peers, and actually it's a great learning tool to be able to have the talent of giving feedback in a constructive way. So I think these are great opportunities as well. And then finally, at the end of the semester, you're going to have the opportunity to provide a professional 15-minute presentation of your capstone paper to the course. And then what I like to do is I like to offer extra credit to my students who also present their capstone papers at the capstone event. What's it called?
Yeah, just policy lab, policies.
Well, no, we have a night, an evening event where they present. What's it called?
Policy
forum. Policy forum. The policy forum. Do you guys know about the policy forum? Yes, we have a policy forum where you can come and present your capstone papers, and I like to give extra credit for those as well. So you can consider my in-class presentation time as a nice prep for your policy forum as well. So any questions about public sector economics, my structure, philosophy, design?
Do you have to bring your own data?
You don't. You don't. Yes?
So, for the topic for your capstone paper, is that based on your interest? Is that
Where do you want to work?
I already work at OSU, which is
Okay.
a full university, but I would like to continue my career.
Do you want to stay at OSU?
Yes.
Is there a specific research question that's of interest to OSU that they need analysis on?
I don't know yet, but I'm sure I can think of something.
Okay. What I would really like for you, if you have a job that you want to keep, if there's some upward mobility or lateral movement that you want
Sure.
in your job, and you feel that some research and expertise in a specific niche area would give you the ability to make that lateral or upward movement,
Sure.
that's what that paper should be about. I'm going to leave it very open because it should be tailored for your specific job interests. It takes a lot more time on my part, but I think it's much more helpful for you in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. So since it is individual tailored, do you strongly encourage them to talk to you before they sign up?
I do.
By what time?
I ask my students to, I require that they provide a detailed prospectus that I work with them weekly on, a detailed prospectus of their plans for finishing the capstone paper by the end of the semester, by the 3rd week of that semester. So by the 3rd week of the semester, they have to come up with, My students have to come up with a detailed prospectus with essentially a schedule of when they're going to get their data, when they're going to analyze their data, and they have to keep to it, and I hold them to it.
Would you encourage them to talk to you before the semester starts?
Absolutely. I want to hear from you now. If you're interested in the course, I want to hear both about what topics you're interested in, are there readings that you're interested in, what jobs you're interested in. That way I can specifically design the course for you and for your benefit. It's not about what I want to teach or what I want to talk about during the semester. It's what's going to help you for your job.
So I've got some huge buckets for my course. So anything having to do with nonprofit organizations, civil society organizations, domestically or internationally, I'm willing to hear about it and consider working with you on that for your capstone. I also have clients in hand for you to do projects for. So if you don't have your own clients in mind, you can come and take a look at the clients that I've got 3 already and possibilities for a few more. Now, my clients tend to be in Europe, Africa. I got one in Columbus, but they're not ones who are likely to end up offering you a job. I can't promise you that. And Noah actually delivers on his promise. He really does. I mean, it's amazing what he's able to do for the students. So this one, I think that you can have a project that actually informs practice, informs policy, makes a difference, helps to create some social change. Is it going to get you a job? I don't know. It might get you a good reference letter. Might get you a really good line on your resume. But that's as far as I'll go in terms of promises I want to make about that. Because I have such a huge bucket, it's very hard to figure out what the readings are going to be ahead of time. So like some of our other capstone instructors, I customize the course depending on the projects that we're working on for the semester. I have some ideas of shared readings that we'll all do. That gives us the same foundation. Gives you an approach in terms of project management, in terms of sort of being a consultant, because remember, I have very client-driven projects. So even though you don't have to come in with data, I have data sets available for you to work on for a client in mind. So the audience is kind of my starting point. Who's your audience going to be? Which might be a potential future employer, but definitely does not have to be. Okay. So we work through some of the questions that a consultant would ask about the design of this change. Usually they're change management efforts. The client has an idea that they need some kind of change, not exactly sure what it is, wants some analysis around that, wants to figure out the best path for that change, and needs some help with it. And so we've had some successes. I've only taught this once before, but just to give you kind of a flavor for one of the projects that we did do, and the other time that I taught, and then I have it again this time with a different title. So last time, all of the projects were international. And one of the project groups worked on looking at community health workers. And their paper, which ended up being a briefing paper, was used for a summit held with 40+ international non-governmental organizations that work with community health workers around the world. So CARE International, 1 Mile Health, Partners in Health, really big organizations that have projects in many developing areas. And that briefing paper was their primary reading to prepare for that summit, and ended up informing some of the research questions that were then funded for them to go forward. So now they've got some extra questions for us based on that summit that potentially could evolve into new capstone projects. I also have Echoing Green, which works with organizations dealing with environmental sustainability. And they've got a couple questions with data in hand that they would love it if my students could work on for them. And I have other ideas in mind. So if you have some interest in non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations here or abroad. You may want to come and talk to me about your ideas, and I can share with you what I'm cooking up at the moment. I also can work to see if I can find some clients for you that are more closely tuned to your idea if you don't have clients already in mind. And you should try to do that again this semester, like our other Capstone instructors have said. Best to get it worked out ahead of time so you can hit that course running in the spring. That's about all I think that I want to say right now. I want to make sure we have time for broader questions or if you have specific questions for me.
Is the format, so it sounds like the other courses are individual papers across group?
Yeah. Great question. So the other time I taught it, we had individual ones and we had group team projects. Kind of depends on the scope of it. How much can you really accomplish alone? If you can accomplish it alone, I'm all for it. If you need help, then I likely can find you a partner for your project. So we had, I think the max group was three people. We also use multiple methods, qualitative, quantitative analysis, use some economics, but hey, if you're hardcore policy analysis types, Monte Carlo, whatever others, don't come to me. Probably not going to get you there. Or I will refer you to others who can help you for the really super fancy stuff to do with data. Mine is going to be simple because that's what clients kind of can understand. So whatever analysis you do, I want you to be able to explain that very easily. Not that they couldn't explain what you teach them, but it's kind of, the analyses tend to be at the more simple level. Now, that means you're probably not going to win the Capstone Paper Award. Usually those are the ones with really sophisticated, heavy-duty kinds of analyses. I don't aspire to that.
Yeah, as long as it's rigorous.
It's
rigorous.
You can see which ones won the awards. It has to be rigorous, and I push for rigor, but I'm just saying that if you really want to dig in and show off a lot of really sophisticated stuff on the statistical side that you haven't done before, check with me to see if I have that expertise or if we can find it somewhere else for you. That would be my only caution in choosing one. Yeah.
So in order to be enrolled in the Capstone, what are the requirements as well? Should we have a research topic in mind, or is it more, if I understood correctly, it's more matching, we can also match you up with a certain organization? What would the expectation be?
Yeah, I'm not expecting a formal proposal where you've got it laid out and you've got your data in hand, or you know the feasibility of getting that data ahead of time. But if you have that, wonderful, great. And if it has something to do with nonprofits and civil society, and I think I can help you, we're good to go. If it's much rougher, you have an audience in mind or a special kind of technique that you would like to use, a specific approach, something that might be of value to a particular kind of client, but you don't have the exact client in mind for it, then that's fine too. Let's take some time and see what we can come up with. But I would like you to give me enough time so that if it doesn't work out, you still have some other options to pursue if you're less well-formed in your idea. But please don't just use it as the default. If you get rejected for these other courses, don't sign up in time, then you kind of fall into my course because it's the only one with open seats left. Because they're going to cut you off after a while. They're kind of first come, first serve with the best projects. And I'm perhaps a little looser.
But the point is we want a good match too, so feel free to talk to any of us about
Or all of
your
us.
ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of shopping going on.
Pardon?
A little bit of shopping going on.
Yeah, shop around.
This might be
Shop
something I'm
around.
interested, but I'm not quite sure. Should I talk to the instructor? That's the purpose of this.
Yeah, I mean, and if it is something super solid that really you want it for an academic audience, you want a research paper that could be published in the kind of journals we all publish in, then maybe you really want to invest in the research paper course. because they're going to get you through that process, and at the end of the class, you're probably going to have something that's pretty close to publishable. Mine, remember, I'm thinking of what can a client get out of this? Have you answered the questions that the clients wanted you to answer, or have you reframed those questions in a way that makes it even more valuable for the client? Because sometimes they don't quite know what they want or what they need, and you have to help them along the way, and we'll talk about that as well. Yeah.
Just to kind of clarify that, are you saying that we kind of have the option to kind of do a research paper within the context of your class, or do something for a kind of existing client and analyze a question they already have, or is it a mixture of both? I guess I'm not sure if it's an either or both.
You could do, there was actually one paper out of my class last time that could have been published in an academic journal. And I talked to them about that, and they want to pursue that at some point. But they're not really interested in academic career, so it's sort of a low priority for them. But it was at that level of rigor, that level of development. And the finding was important enough that it could have gone into that. Now, along the way, though, they had to identify clients outside of academia, not just other professors like me who were fascinated by what they were doing. So that idea of a deliverable for a client is important for my class. So even if you take a research paper and approach it in a very academic kind of style, I'm still going to ask you, so who should read this? Who could draw something that then might change their decision-making for policy or practice in a more sort of outside the university. But you could do a research paper. Depends on who you really want for your audience.
We can also make the Capstone Award paper requirements available to you, and that would also give you another level of detail to what we talked about today in terms of what's required. So in that, you would see that presentations, oral presentation of your ideas is an important component, and by looking at that, you could see what the dimensions of that are. So we can make that available. We're going to have a Capstone paper webpage for you, and we'll just attach that as well. So you can see generally across the capstones, you can see there's a lot of variety. Generally across them, what are the major components that we're looking for and how we operationalize those.